I'm going to talk about spatial planning this afternoon. So my topic is about reimagining spatial planning. But before I start, I want to define the definition of spatial planning because I realize actually it means different things to different people. So could you put your hands up if you think your research or your work have something to do with spatial planning? Great. Hope after the presentation I can change your mind. So spatial planning is all about our living environment, about how people will interact with nature and with our society. Because every one of us have two characteristics. So one is we are part of nature, and on the other hand, we're all part of the society because we have families, we have friends. So I believe the fundamental objective of the planning profession is to create a balanced system for people, nature, and society to coexist in harmony. Before we can really start to look for how we can live in a very sustainable way, I think actually at the moment, the more urgent question is really how we can survive. It's really about our interrelationship with nature and with our society. So at the moment, we have about 8.1 billion population on the planet. Currently, 45% of us live in areas with high natural reservation value, and 3.6 to 3.6 billion of us live in areas are highly vulnerable to climate change. So this is the impact, the challenge we talk about. In the last 2 decades, the urbanization had unprecedented high speed. But according to UN Habitat, the current urbanization speed has slowed down. So in the future, we will see more urban-rural type of development. So in 50 years' time, the land taken for people living in urban, semi-rural areas and also rural areas will be taking double of the space than people living in urban areas. So although we would have more people living in urban areas in terms of population, but the land taken, the rural and the semi-rural areas will be doubling of that space. So this means actually we cannot only look planning from only urban perspective. We need to think about urban-rural integrated approach and also think beyond urban areas. We need to think about from both local, regional, national, and eventually a global approach to think about planning because everything is interconnected. I always describe, because we quite often call our planet our Mother Earth, I think if we compare our Mother Earth with our real mother, I think it's very comparable with forests and woodlands as her hair, soils as her muscles, and then our river systems as her blood vessels. So our towns, cities, and villages are not concrete forests. They are part of organic organs of her body. So everything should be interconnected as a whole ecosystem. So I think we need to think about global picture as the starting point and then provide local solutions. IPCC, they published this report last year, and they talk about if we don't provide a climate-resilient development model, we will miss the very narrow window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all. So every day is a missing opportunity for all of us to back onto the right track. So this is the urgency we will talk about, which relies on multidisciplinary collaboration and coming from different disciplines. We have to find one solution rather than many different fragmented solutions. But the current problem we have is we have so many silos. So different professionals, different sectors work within their own circle. There is a lack of long-term and joined-up actions. So all these challenges actually is not exclusive of all the challenges we are facing, but just even list some of the most talked about ones. You can realize actually there are so many of them, and they are interconnected. But so often we only talk within our own circle. And then there are so many cross-disciplinary collaborations should happen, but actually it's not happening. And also such a lot of data we can share between ourselves, but not being shared. That's why I think spatial planning plays a key role. Because quite often we see research, scientific research, and policies are focusing within one sector. But in reality, our world is a place-based place. So actually, we have to take a place-based approach to make sure actually all these scientific research and the policies coming into one place to happen. This is research published by Cambridge University. They talk about, at the moment, if we want to tackle the challenges to provide more land for biodiversity, and also at the same time to provide food security for a growing population, provide housing, infrastructure, and water need. All these will require additional 7 million hectares of land in the UK. But it is impossible because simply the UK itself only has 24 million hectares. We just couldn't fund the additional 7 million hectares of land. So which requires we have to think about multifunctionality. So one piece of land have to carry out multiple functions. For example, our lakes can be water attenuation function, and also can be biodiversity, and also can be recreational function. So all these should be considered altogether. Our buildings may not be only a concrete physical object, but actually our building can carry out other nature-based solutions. So all these should be considered. Otherwise, we cannot really tackle the problem from different angles. And also, when we make decisions and when we think about planning, it's not a standstill process. Actually, it evolves, relates to different challenges and different things coming forward. I'm using an example of the very, I think, quite hotly debated topic, nutrient neutrality. If you see the consequence of how the incident happened, from 2020 in July, Natural England issued a notice to local authorities. And then because of the notice, the local authorities across England, they have to stop some of the development. So if we use the example of Ashford Borough Council, essentially 90% of all their housing permission had to put on hold because they cannot really allow more development to happen without the nutrient neutrality issue resolved. And then suddenly, 2 weeks ago, the government published new rules to say we have to stop this and then let's carry on to build more housing. So where is the scientific research built into this? Why Natural England, if they have been following this data, why they didn't notice the local authorities well in advance? So we could really resolve things in a much more systematic and long-term way rather than leave until the last minute. So literally in the last 3 years, these authorities, they could not deliver any housing already actually promised was going to be developed. That would have a long-term consequence to the local economy, to the local community, and also to the overall country's economy. So I think this is a very good example of things are not joined up. And then I think spatial planning should play a key role. We could miss the opportunity to save ourselves because we lose the ability to plan for the future collaboratively. When I talk about planning, quite often people think about planning is about housing delivery. I think it's much more than that. And also people think planning is very narrowly focused on bureaucratic exercise. I think that mindset needs to be changed. There are many research recognize the importance of spatial planning. I'm giving some examples. For example, IPCC, in their Climate Change 2022 report, they talk about spatial planning needs the largest systematic change as a key climate change adaptation option. This report has 3,000 pages, actually over 3,000 pages, and they quoted 34,000 referenced papers. And their conclusion was there was little evidence of real climate resilient development. That's because we don't really have the collaboration needed globally and nationally. In the report, in the last chapter, IPCC lists a series of actions with some small actions and large actions. They list spatial planning, a systematic change needed for spatial planning, as the number one systematic change, the largest systematic change in the whole list. It really shows the significance of spatial planning as a key climate change adaptation option. And also, same recognition comes from biodiversity review. The Dasgupta review is the first biodiversity review to relate to the economics in the world. That also recognizes the importance of land use and marine spatial planning to balance economic, social, and environmental trade-offs. And also, same thing mentioned by the World Health Organization about the importance of planning can play a key role in making cities more prepared for future emergencies. That comes from the response, recovery, mitigation, and preparedness. So all these key international organizations, they argue for the importance of spatial planning. So I think spatial planning, rather than should be seen as a bureaucratic exercise. We should see spatial planning as an applied science across social, environmental, and behavioral science with a global significance. Again, this morning we have the lady from UKI ask about the social aspect. Quite often we think about resilience is about environmental resilience, infrastructure resilience. But have we think about the society resilience? Because we are having an aging population. And there's a strong correlation between the aging population, our living environment, and the future resilience. I think Homes England or the Deluxe, they published an English housing review last year. And they identified there is a strong correlation between the aging population and between the non-decent homes and the energy inefficiency. I think there are about 3.5 million non-decent homes in England. 96% of them are in the worst energy efficiency rates. So you can see the strong correlation. And of course, these non-decent homes will have direct impact into people's health. So I think before we can talk about what can be changed, the number one question is, what is our purpose? For whom do we plan? Do we plan for physical objects, or we plan for people, for our future, for our society? I think the answer is obvious. We really have to think about our society, our future. But if you look the tendency of the population change, by 2050, in the world, about 1/5 of the people will be over 60 years old. In the UK, there will be 1/3 of people over 60 years old. So who will look after all of us over 60 years old? We have to build social infrastructure to make sure the social resilience is in place to look after all of us, which planning can play a key role to really create effective mechanism to capture the land value for the long-term benefit of the community. And also quite often we design infrastructure sometimes for very fit young men. But if you look at this diagram, we have half of the population is women. And also we have children and the elderly. That counts more than 70% of our population. Should their concern be our first priority to be considered? So I think all I want to say is we need a systematic change as what IPCC suggested. The problem comes from we see planning as an administrative and legislative process. But we need to add the creative pillar, which is about scientific research, innovation, and also mechanisms we can introduce into the planning system to make sure actually we can benefit the majority of the society. And also, crucially, we need the civil support because 59% of the societal and behavioral change can contribute to the climate change actions, contribute to the balanced net zero pathway. So the civic support is so important to make sure things can happen. We all heard about the term called NIMBLES, kind of not at my backyard. Because of the very strong against development approach from communities, the infrastructure delivery cost in the UK is the highest in the world. So we are not benefiting from this infrastructure investment or the development. We should really go back to reinvest into the infrastructure because there was strong opposition quite often from the communities about anything could happen on their doorstep because we haven't really communicated enough about what we want to achieve together. So I think we need a methodological change in spatial planning empowered by digital technologies and big data. Spatial planning relates to, if we talk about planetary approach, it relates to everything. It's totally beyond any single person's their knowledge to capture all this knowledge. So we have the data and the digital technology which could enable and empower this methodological change. So we need to establish a digitally enabled, place-based systems approach to tackle the grand challenges and create a sustainable community. So this is a new methodology I developed to talk about how we can empower the decision-making process. Because at the moment, quite often, our planning decision-making process is very subjective and quite emotional sometimes. So we need to build into more scientific evidence and based on empowered by data and technology. It is based on two interconnected loops. One is a democratic and transparent decision-making loop. One is an evidence analytics loop empowered by data and digital technology. It can be broken into 6 steps. Number 1 is about framing the right question. Quite often, when we have, think about developing a new area or think about national or regional planning, we do have environmental impact assessment. So all these social, environmental, and behavior, and also economic constraints and opportunities need to be considered in an integrated way. But we need to ask the community what they need and what are their current issues from day one. Because at the moment in planning, we often develop a proposal and then we ask people, what do you think about it? That needs to be changed. We need to understand what people need and how they use the space from day one. Apart from the traditional way of participation, we can build participatory GIS, use other means to really capture this essential data. And also, quite often we use historical data. It's important for us to think about the future changes. There are many foresight studies has been done by the government. So we need to really think about the climate impact, the potential future technology impact, and also the demographic change. So all this future thinking can build into how we frame our question. And also from these 3 different aspects, if we can communicate this key information as evidence, but also in an understandable way by the public and by key stakeholders, we can create a shared vision. I think that's where spatial planner can play a key role, because we have so many different stakeholders and they may have their different priority, but it's really how we can make them understand what is our universal common good, which is net zero, biodiversity, social equality, and also circular economy. From there, we can work with multidisciplinary team to think about how we can see our built and natural environment as a whole ecological entity and use nature-based solutions to think about how we develop our built and natural environment in an integrated way. So we have multidisciplinary collaboration enabled by this different approach. So we shouldn't really have separate policy, which is written in words, disregards the real places. So I argue we need to have this placemaking and the plan making happening all together, which requires, again, multidisciplinary collaboration. And the public should be engaged in this co-production process so they know what's going on and they can give their input so they can endorse the proposal in the future. That could really allow us to have a much quicker, speed up approval process, and also can help us to build this integrated service and implementation package. And then that's where digital twin and real-time data can come into place, can help to really consolidate all these multidisciplinary considerations together. And then more importantly, after that, we have a monitoring and a feedback stage to make sure using the benefit of digital twins and real-time data, we can capture the key information and then to provide back to the first question about how we frame our question. Actually, in the future, if we can build this system, we don't really have to the current stage of every 5 years, let's review our local plan. We could have this interactive and simultaneously review of how we should develop our built and natural environment. And also, if there's any emergency happen, we can react very quickly. I think technically everything is possible. It's really how we can create this platform to make sure we can work together. So we can have a people-focused, scientifically based, and a digitally enabled decision-making process. Because if you can see from IPCC's report, I think IPCC has been arguing about the significance of climate change and how people's activity influencing climate change and how we should act as soon as possible. But in reality, we still see housing built in floodplains nowadays, and we still see we are building house not fit for purpose. We still see housing built not accessible for wheelchair users. So all this should not happen nowadays because actually we are creating problems today for the future without thinking about the future. Our living environment is so important to us. But at the moment, our living environment contributes to 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions, and it consumes 33% of the global energy use, and use nearly half of all natural resources around the globe. So we should not be part of the problem. We should be part of the solution, which I think can be done through this methodological change. So this is a focus why we set up the Digital Task Force for Planning. This was first set up as an independent expert panel in 2021, and we conducted a comprehensive research and published a report called A Digital Future Plan for Planning, Spatial Planning Reimagined. Our research actually was not funded by anybody, so it's just like we have zero funding because we didn't really have time to ask for any funding. So we took this comprehensive research and we asked local authorities about their constraints, and also we asked planning schools about how they are integrating digital education in their education system. I won't have time to share all the slides about our survey, and you can download it from our website. But there was strong evidence to show actually our planning system is not benefiting from all this scientific research and the enormous amount of very useful data we are talking about. So there's need of this fundamental mindset change because planning is not being seen as the key mechanism to deliver this this systems approach we talked about today. And then we give 8 key recommendations, which can be described into 3 categories. One is about mindset change, one is about methodological change, and also about detailed actions. So we talk about we should have digital capacity built for the country, including common spatial data environment of a national mapping and data sets, a national network of regional data observatories, so we can have regional and localized data input into the system. And also we should have integrated planning open data framework because every single planning application is submitted in a PDF format. The enormous amount of knowledge and evidence are not captured for the longer benefit, are not really being used for local authorities making their decisions. And also we should have planning metadata and information management standard we talked about this morning. And crucially, we need to develop a set of digital tools and techniques which can be used through different stages of planning process. And also they are useful for planners to use. Because this morning, despite we have all this fantastic research, I just think for a normal planner in local authorities, there is no way they can even access or know these tools exist. So we really have to make them available for them so they can build into their considerations and build into the politicians' decision-making process. Our research, despite we didn't have any funding, but we made global impact. So we had readers from 109 countries. And just counting my Twitter and LinkedIn, we have downloads from 42,000 readers of our report. So you're welcome to be another 42,000. So last year, we incorporated the digital task force as a social enterprise. This is the first of this kind in the world. We want to focus on the development part of R&D. Like I said, this morning, I was so inspired by your models you talk about, but how we can make sure this can be accessible by planners, by planning profession, and also they can feed into our planning education for the future. So the task force want to help to create this ecosystem to make connections between research and practice and feed into our future education. Because actually when the planning profession was first started, was never meant to be a separate profession. The purpose for the planning profession was to act as a forum for all environmental specialists to come together with a social purpose. So I think you are all classified as environmental scientists, and we should all come together to make our world a better place for our future generations. So our focus of the task force will function like I described it as a digital national trust. Because national trust was formed 150 years ago to really help to preserve the heritage asset in the country for future generations. But for research, quite often our research projects are funded maybe for one round of 5 years, 3 years, and then 2 rounds for 10 years. And then after that, the researcher they have left, and then they move on to another research. All this enormous amount of knowledge, and actually it's not only about knowledge, it's our life, just live there. Nobody's using them. So what I want to do is really create this open source so we can really capture all this knowledge and then preserve them. So the future generations and other researchers, they can go to this place to really learn, to see what other people have done. Through my research, I realized there are so many duplications in our field. But if we could really capture this knowledge together, we can advance much quicker and much faster to really achieve our goal. So we have actually, I have much thank DAFNI conference last year. I went to the DAFNI conference in Manchester and I met UK Craig and the CDIS. And then since then, we signed MOU with them for collaboration. And also our work was recognized by Geospatial Commission. We were the second case study referred after the DAFA. If we didn't carry out our research, there will be no research talk about this bigger picture of spatial planning, which will be a big missing point. So the task force, we only started, is still very early days. What I want to create is an ecosystem. And one of the key parts is to create a multidisciplinary expert panel. I think all of you could play a key role in this expert panel because we really want to create this multidisciplinary panel so we can really communicate and think about how we can benefit our current knowledge and then to make sure actually we contribute to the one goal, to make better, intelligent decisions. So this is what we want to achieve. And it is our grand vision. I know it sounds grand, but I think we must do it. We want to seize the rapid closing window of opportunity to steer the world back onto the right trajectory. Because if we don't, we won't be able to survive. There's no other option. So I would like to invite you to join us to be part of this exciting journey and to pioneer a way forward. If not us, who will do it? If not now, when we should wait? So I invite you to be a part of our journey as we pioneer a way forward. So this is my contact emails, and please get in touch if you are interested. Thank you very much.